You literally told him, you know, you don't offer any solutions, so here's a comic book for you to critique. And they said, no, we don't even want it published. We don't want to even read it and critique it back. That seems like a tantrum to me. That seems like Mark Waid is throwing a tantrum. And doesn't that sort of prove Richard Meyer's point? You might remember a few months ago we had a controversial video where I more or less defended Richard Meyer, and I was really only defending his ability to publish a comic book through Antarctic Press. But Antarctic Press dropped him. Mark Waid took credit for it, and months later, a law firm, real law firm, is representing Richard Meyer in a lawsuit against Mark Waid. We have that lawsuit. So this is plaintiff's original complaint. I love these guys already. It's no flourishing language. Plaintiff Richard Meyer files this original complaint seeking damages from defendant Mark Waid. I love it already. Forgetting the merit of it or whatever we're about to read, it wasn't huge and flourishing and everything I'm doing now. It was very brief and to the point. So plaintiff Richard Meyer, defendant Mark Waid. We are in federal court and we are on federal diversity jurisdiction, so that means the amount in controversy must exceed $75,000 by at least 1 penny. Venue is set saying that the claims occur in this judicial district, and we are in the Western District of Texas, Austin Division. Richard Meyer is a lifelong fan of comic books, starting with G.I. Joe. Meyer's father was in the military, and Meyer looked to G.I. Joe as a military hero. He became intrigued with Marvel comics like X-Men. G.I. Joe and X-Men were heroes fighting against evil forces, but those heroes were endowed with superpowers. Half of the X-Men were women. Storm, an African-American woman, could control the weather, was one of X-Men's leaders. Oh, he's really starting off with the, we do believe in diversity and equality here, everyone. It's in the first paragraph. I'm not denying it. I'm just saying, like he's really pointing it out here. Make sure this is right up front. Both G.I. Joe and X-Men were racially diverse teams with women in key leadership roles, even back in the 1980s. Meyer continued to read comics, Marvel superhero comics, into adulthood. He followed his family's military tradition, enlisted in the Marines, 4 years as a Marine, deployed in Iraq, attained the rank of sergeant. So he's Sergeant Meyer, honorably discharged, went back to college and completed his studies. He joined the military again as an Army sergeant, served another 4 years, was deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan, continued to read comic books and graphic novels during his years of service. Well, thank you for your service, Sergeant Meyer. Over the years, Meyer had grown increasingly disappointed with what he perceived as the declining quality of comic books being published by the two dominant industry publishers, Marvel and DC. That decline was accompanied with decreasing sales of comic books overall. The quality had declined in his eyes due to publishers' hiring of inexperienced writers and editors who did not have credentials consistent with those historically recognized within the industry. Meyer believed that the stories were poorly written and increasingly uninteresting and were becoming overtly politicized. Not overtly, as in intentionally politicized. Meyer attributed this trend and the accompanying decrease in sales of comics due to publishers' decisions to ignore their fans' preferences for superhero comics and replace those comics with new characters that promoted political ideologies, which Meyer believes dilutes the genre. Moreover, criticism of the industry by comic book fans was met with hostility, derision, name-calling, profanity from top-level editors and comic book writers and artists. In April 2017, Meyer started a YouTube channel called Diversity and Comics with the intention of providing comparisons of superhero comics produced by Marvel and DC Comics in the 80s and 90s to the comic books that were being produced today. Meyer's first video reviewed a 97 Captain America comic book written by Mark Waid, where Meyer praised the drawing, storytelling, action sequences, and plot development. In fact, Meyer described the book as a classic in the superhero genre. Meyer continued posting videos on diversity in comics, reviewing older superhero comics as well as current comic books that were being produced. During the following 17 months, Meyer produced and published over 1,300 videos, and his YouTube channel amassed 88,000 followers with 28 million views. Meyer's criticism of the new politicized comic books, his videos clearly resonated with industry followers and consumers, was specific and often biting, sarcastic, and hyperbolic, although admittedly at times his attempts at sardonic humor fell flat. Through all this time, Meyer's aim was to rescue the comic book industry from what he saw as its own self-imposed demise through the over-politicization of stories and dilution of the superhero genre he had grown to love. Although Meyer had many followers, his challenges to the entrenched status quo within the industry also gathered a very vocal group of detractors, including Waid, who had an even larger group of online followers. Waid is a highly influential presence in the comic industry, having spent 4 decades working in establishment positions with industry leaders Marvel and DC Comics before becoming a freelance speaker and commentator. Waid currently works on multiple comic books published by Marvel. During his long career, Waid has written multiple series that are considered classics in the industry. Waid has thousands of friends following his Facebook posts and almost 100,000 Twitter followers. Waid and his followers were either part of or supported the comic book industry establishment that Meyer routinely criticized on his channel. Both Waid and his followers were angered by Meyer's critical account of their comics and their use of comics to promote political ideology, resulting in sometimes pointed and public exchanges with Meyer over the validity of his critiques. By contrast, while critical of politicization in comics, Meyer himself is not politically motivated, nor does he hold political views outside of the mainstream. He just believes that political agendas should not be embedded into comic books, and that doing so is a significant factor in the demise of the industry. For example, the number of stores specializing in sales of comic books has dwindled over the past 10 years from about 4,300 to about 2,100, and the number of books sold has dropped about 50% between 97 and present. Clearly, the product being generated by the industry leaders is not appealing to modern audiences in the same way that Meyer's treasured superheroes of his youth were embraced. This demise has been presided over by the 2 industry giants, DC and Marvel Comics, who dominate roughly 90% market share, and similarly 90% of the distribution of books is controlled by a single entity, Diamond Comic Distributors, which holds an acknowledged monopoly over direct comic distribution in the country. Independent artists and producers face significant hurdles in getting fresh product to the comic book consuming marketplace without sponsorship from DC or Marvel and support from Diamond. New voices cannot be heard effectively through traditional channels. Meyer's aggressive criticism led to unfounded claims by establishment supporters like Waid that he held a number of socially extreme views which are flatly untrue. By late 2017, media reports began to emerge characterizing Meyer as a bigot, a racist, and part of a group that promotes white supremacy. At various times, Waid has described Meyer as a serial harasser of women and minorities and claimed he promotes hate and intolerance. These statements were intended to discredit Meyer and detract from his vocal calls for fundamental change within the comic book industry. One of the criticisms leveled by Waid and others against Meyer has been that he has only complained about the emerging low-quality market and had no solutions or appreciation for the difficulty of creating quality work. Meyer decided this point was valid and that he should channel his vision into creation of what a comic book true to what the tradition should be. On April 9, 2018, Meyer publicly announced that he was publishing his own comic book, JAWBREAKERS Lost Souls, a story about 5 ex-superheroes that come out of retirement to protect a giant mutant ape from being exploited by a warlord. It was a decidedly apolitical, straightforward, multi-superhero comic. It is devoid of any bigoted, nationalist, racist, or gender themes. Meyer had teamed up with top artists to illustrate and color the book and was in discussions with a small, independent, San Antonio-based comic book publisher, Antarctic Press, to publish and distribute the comic book. On the same day, Meyer started a crowdfunding campaign to finance the book. That campaign raised over $50,000 in the first 4 days and over $110,000 by the end of April. Clearly, the market was looking for a fresh voice and an alternative to the establishment's status quo. The crowdfunding campaign officially closed on May 9th, 2018. By that time, Meyer and Antarctic Press had agreed to terms for publishing Jawbreakers. They agreed that Meyer and his team would produce the book, Antarctic Press would publish and distribute it. Meyer and Antarctic Press agreed that after paying all costs of production, they would split the profits 50-50. In addition, Antarctic Press agreed conceptually to publish future comic books written by Meyer, including Iron Sights and later Jawbreaker editions. That same day, rumors and leaked chat transcripts suggested that certain retailers aligned with Waid and his followers had agreed not to carry Meyer's book and to boycott Antarctic Press because of the misinformation being spread about Meyer and his views. Initially, Antarctic Press was not flustered. Instead, Antarctic Press responded, "That just shows me we're doing the right thing standing with you." Later that evening, Antarctic Press publicly announced on its Twitter page, "Where it's official, we're publishing Jawbreakers in September." Less than 36 hours later, Waid tweeted to his followers that he was going to contact Antarctic Press to interfere with its impending publication of Meyer's book, saying, quote, "I have a call into Antarctic Press until I hear back. I'm hesitantly willing to give them the benefit of the doubt that they don't really understand who or what they're getting into business with, which, thought it would seem a stretch, is a possibility. If I do hear back, I'll report in." On information and belief, this triggered an onslaught by Waid's followers against Antarctic Press, with calls and threats to Antarctic Press and its owners' other unaffiliated businesses. Later that day, Waid spoke by telephone with one of the owners of Antarctic Press and convinced him that Antarctic Press should repudiate its contract with Meyer. Frightened for its very survival by Waid's threats, and primarily because of his unwelcome interference, Antarctic Press caved to Waid's pressure and issued the following statement. Quote, "After careful consideration, it is the decision of Antarctic Press to not release the comic series Jawbreakers. Antarctic Press is a staunch believer in creators' rights and giving creators a chance to showcase their creation and allowing that creation to be judged on its merits. Many forces, many of them should be viewed with great trepidation about our society acts, have led us..." I don't know which word is missing from that sentence. "Have led us to this decision. We do not take this decision lightly, as we do believe that there should be separation between art and artist, and that separation has been blurred in, I would say by, their decision." Almost immediately following Antarctic Press's announcement, perhaps having been warned that his interference was actionable, Waid deactivated all of his theretofore quite active social network accounts without explanation. Following Antarctic Press's experience, no other publishers would consider publishing Meyer's comic book. Meyer's only option was to self-publish by creating his own independent publishing company, which he did. At significant expense and after significant delay in publication of Jawbreakers, Meyer is now performing all of the tasks that Antarctic Press would have performed in the absence of Waid's interference with Meyer's contract. Instead of pursuing other potential business interests, including writing additional comic books, Meyer is responsible for overseeing the printing of Jawbreakers and arranging to ship copies ordered online through Meyer's crowdfunding campaign. Meyer's loss of access to independent publishers due to Waid's interference is not limited to increased production costs. As a result of Waid's actions, Meyer has been effectively blackballed by the comic book industry. No publishers, independent or otherwise, are currently willing to consider working with Meyer on Jawbreakers or future projects. Meyer could not even find a US-based artist for his next book, and has resorted to contracting with one he located from the Philippines. Access to conventions and convention panels is also linked to being published by one of the dominant or independent publishers. The lack of access to those markets has further damaged Meyer and is a direct result of Waid's interference with Meyer's contract with Antarctic Press and false statements. In the meantime, Waid has described the events of May 11 in interviews and on comic convention panels. Waid has falsely stated that Meyer published a list of comic book stores with the first and last names of the comic book store employees in response to the store's decision not to carry Jawbreakers. In doing so, Waid suggested that Meyer was encouraging his followers to harass or threaten the comic book store employees. In fact, Meyer has only identified the stores identified in the leaked chat transcript that had agreed not to carry Jawbreakers and the individuals who were part of that conversation. By repeating this false allegation, Waid further alienated Meyer from the comic book stores and fans at large in the industry. And so he has pled tortious interference with a contract that Ward either knew or should have known that a person would have had a contract and that he interfered with it, and that damages exceed $75,000. Defamation, that Waid intentionally published false statements that he knew were false and that were meant to damage Richard Meyer, characterizing him as a racist serial harasser of minorities and affiliated with white supremacists. He's also asked the court to find exemplary damages, that this was done maliciously and therefore damages should be not only ×1, but then additional ×3. And so you get a total of ×3 damages. So he's asked for actual, special, exemplary damages, costs of court, and all other relief. And that seems pretty reasonable to me, actually. In my research, I was not able to find this horrible person who everyone claims who everyone was saying Richard Meyer was this horrible person. I have not been able to find that. It seems to me more like someone didn't like his views and so said some horrible things about him and got him blackballed in the industry. So he should have some kind of remedy for that, right? There should be something that he can do to protect his job, because you shouldn't just be able to take somebody's job like that by calling them things that are untrue, no matter how much you don't like them. Even if you don't like, a person's political views, you can oppose them for all the right reasons, but not just because you don't like their political views. They need to have a job, they need to get health insurance and stuff. So you can't make the world completely unlivable for somebody you disagree with. Just because somebody disagrees with Richard Meyer and his views doesn't mean they should try to take away his ability to earn a living, pay taxes, make money, and create the comic book that, like, you literally told him, you don't offer any solutions, so here's a comic book for you to critique. And they said, no, we don't even want it published. We don't want to even read it and critique it back. That seems like a tantrum to me. That seems like Mark Waid is throwing a tantrum. And doesn't that sort of prove Richard Meyer's point that he's immature and puts his own face and stuff in places where it really doesn't belong? Just saying.
I mean, this guy essentially single-handedly destroyed his life, allegedly, right? So
I don't know about destroyed his life, destroyed his career maybe, or at least injured the beginning of this guy's, of Richard Meyer's career, allegedly.
Yeah. Man, that really sucks. How can you do that to somebody?
Yeah, I mean, like, imagine if we wrote a Lawful Masses book, or heck, imagine if we got all the way done with Lawyer Simulator, and then somebody says, oh, that Leonard French, by the way, do you know that he's not straight? And we only support straight people. And so everybody go out there and make a big protest so nobody publishes Lawyer Simulator because it's written by a bisexual man. What? Like, what? So, like, I just, like, why would you say that this guy can't publish his comic book because he disagrees with you politically and criticizes your work? And at no time, you will not hear me saying in the earlier story about Judge Kavanaugh, oh, I don't like him, therefore he shouldn't be confirmed. Or, I don't like that he went to Yale and I didn't, or I don't like that he, identifies more on the right side of things than on the left side of things politically. No, if there's an attack, it needs to be meritorious. If there's something wrong with Richard Meyer, show us where he is doing these horrible things so that we can see for ourselves. There is no need to send up the rallying cry, trust me, you should go after this guy. No, you don't need to do that. Show us the real facts and let us all make our own decisions. That's how we do it. As you know, this is a community-supported channel. I am Leonard French, your favorite copyright attorney, and you can support more videos on patreon.com/ljfrench or by supporting us by subscribing on Twitch. or contributing bits and things like that. There are lots of ways to contribute. But thank you very much to our $50 plus Patreon supporters: Jonathon Doe, John Steele, Gavin Barnard, Eevi, Andy, Kyle Mudrak, Verement, Tayne, Sean McNamara, William Gonzalez, Michael Pearce, Grunkle, Tia Marie, Terry Chris, Richard Fournier, and Michael Jones. You are our September $50 plus supporters, but these videos will be going up in October, so I will also have a crawl for the new people for October. I just won't know exactly who you are until the thing rolls over tomorrow or when it gets charged, and I really won't know till October 2nd. So, also thank you to the 200 plus $5 plus supporters that are scrolling on the LED panel behind me from September and will be crawling on the screen from October when these videos drop as VODs. Thank you very much for all your support. It makes a world of difference to us. It makes this channel possible. It means we stay independent. It means we don't do certain cliche things that everybody has to do from time to time. It means we've avoided mainstream advertising and all that. I still click the checkbox to monetize the videos, and I still insert ads in other places from time to time, depending upon how long the video is. You can subscribe via YouTube Red to avoid those, but we really appreciate the ads that you watch for us when you don't subscribe to YouTube Red, because that helps also keep us going. It's a whole diversity of income that is necessary to keep this sort of production going. Someday we will probably be a higher budget production. When we have that budget, I'll be thanking you for that too. I really appreciate you all. I am Leonard French, your favorite copyright attorney. Have a great week. Are you just a cuddle bug right now?
He's been a cuddle bug. Yeah, who's a better gamer, you or...
Oh, we were playing a story-based game, so we had a good time playing Destiny 2 Forsaken.
Okay.